So this is an experiment here that we're doing. This is called my 10th level Paladin. I'm gonna do a series of these, I hope, with friends of mine. The very first one here was with my buddy Mike Leader, who I used to live with and I gamed with for years. And I think Mike's the most appropriate person to have on this show for the first episode. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about one of Mike's favorite characters or his favorite character. I think I know who he's going to talk about, but I have not prepped him. All I've told him is we're going to ask probing questions, and we'll go from there. Mike, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mike Leader. You can find me online at Dr. Fusion on Twitter. That's the best place to look for me. I've been gaming since I was in fifth grade, so a very long time at this point. And I'm glad to be here, actually. Talking about characters is actually one of the best mainstays and how we get to know each other in the gaming industry, really. It says a lot about a person when you hear about who they play as their fantasy character. So,
Right, right. That's a really good point. It's kind of betrays your character, right? Because when you're your personal character, not your character,
hmm
when you first start gaming, you always play the Conan version of yourself, right? That's what most kids gravitate toward.
oh, yeah.
And if you don't ever grow out of that stage, it tells us a lot about who you are. That's your fetish forever in gaming. But your next the next 10 years is defined, I think, by the experiments that you do in gaming. Um,
Yeah, and watching someone's character growth over time and looking at your own character growth over time really shows a lot about you as a gamer. And everyone should be a little introspective about who and what they're playing. It's really kind of great to see people you've gamed with for a long time really kind of change up in how they play and grow. Working a lot with people in Adventures League for D&D, I got to watch people grow from that Conan character to some really interesting things that they found. And everyone goes through a wacky phase, everyone goes through an angry phase. And so, but
right.
it's fun to watch people getting into gaming grow through their characters. And that's why I really jumped at the chance to do this with you, because it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I like I said, I hope this first episode goes well in terms of people just enjoying this format. I had this idea, I don't know, I want to say about 2 months ago when I first approached you, and I
hmm
said let's do an episode. But it's just a timing issue of getting together and talking about it. But the
Always.
idea grew just from I made a joke about how often you hear about people's characters when you work in the gaming industry and you go to game conventions and people come to the booth and they want to talk about their character. And I thought I've had some really good stories actually over the year, despite thousands of oh my god, shut up kind of moments. There are some great stories that come out when people tell you about their character and you go, oh, I have never actually heard that before.
Yeah, and you actually sometimes even get a campaign story, which is, and some of them are really, and honestly, a lot of them are really good. And there are those that are questionable, and I'll leave it at that. Um, we all know, we've all heard the stories. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
and,
yeah.
and it's a good thing is that even not working in industry, some people who haven't, you've experienced this too. And and I think every gamer will eventually experience it the way we experience. When you've been doing this for a long period of time, you've heard all the tropes. It's
Yeah.
really about how that persona mimics who you are and grows you as a person, and really is entertaining for you and the group. That's the way
Uh,
I look at it. And that's the way I come to look at it too. You and I getting together for so long, you've seen my character growth over the years. And I think the one I'm going to talk about today um, is less about me and more about how I work with groups to run and play, because
well,
I don't get to play that much.
that sounds like a perfect segue, Mike. Introduce us to your character.
Well, character's name is Sarban Rivalor. He
Oh, not the
is
one I thought you were going to talk about.
no,
Okay.
and Sarban is not, as like I mentioned before, someone you don't know, but he came to be a favorite because I'll tell more about it. Sergeant Rivalor is a D&D character. Started as a D&D character, kind of spread into a couple other games as well because of the way the character works. He works well in so many genres. I was asked to play a bard. That's one thing I don't play, and we all know how bards are fun. Not fun for a lot of us. Like, oh, I want to sing. That's not the last thing I want. I said, no, okay, fine. I'm going to play as different a bard as I possibly can, and
Right.
I want to prove to people, because I had an argument at an event with people about arguing to agreement in a group and why it's important that people who are diametrically opposed to adventuring can be useful in games and work with the party and be a hindrance but not a hindrance at the same time and actually be helpful. And
Right.
so I
We've
said, well,
been
I'm going to make a complete and utter coward who doesn't belong in an adventuring party,
right,
who is a
right.
sneak thief, who's a coward. He draws on a lot of different people. So you have a College of Lore bard as he grew in time. But the idea was just to make a coward who runs and hides and steals from people and is best known for just talking shit. So like, well, what's your instrument? Like, oh, instrument. I'm a stand-up comedian. So he's just an insult comic. He's just a jerk. He's good
Oh
at making
my
people
God.
laugh. He's good at stealing people and lying to them. That's all he's ever good at. And so inspiring is a matter of yelling people to get their shit done. And stop being stupid. Get your ass over there. And that was just a funny notion to work with. I thought, well, I can take this kind of person who's a coward and refuses to fight, hides in combat, doesn't do things that draw attention to him, and to see how that goes.
Right.
And it was the first episode. We're playing, of all things, Tomb of Annihilation, which is a very difficult module to play,
Right.
and but an amazing setting. And you want me to go? I'm the charlatan they meet in the marketplace who's stealing from the PCs and they first meet him.
Right.
Selling them trinkets that they shouldn't be. Oh, I've got this potion you should definitely have. Oh, it's a potion of healing? Yes, it is, and I'm selling it for 25 gold. 25, it's like 50 everywhere else. You guys look like you need help. I've got it for you. And players were paying me money. and
That's
I
fantastic.
sold them colored water.
Sure.
And that came to back on me in character later. But and and the players knew what I was doing and they were cool with it because they knew it would be fun.
Right. Right.
Now, as you go along, this character would turn invisible and hide in combat. Use abilities when he needed to, but really, it's a matter of how do I get us through this without making myself a target, and constantly arguing that we shouldn't go that way, we should go this way, knowing I was wrong, but more forcing the party to keep talking about things and make decisions without having to smash everything every 5 minutes.
Right. Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. Absolutely. That's my favorite thing is solving problems without violence. So,
Yeah, and especially in a game, especially in that setting for Tomb of Annihilation, where there's a lot of think outside the box. You don't have to fight everything. You can sneak around and get stuff done. And it did backfire a couple times, really spectacularly backfire sometimes.
right.
But that's all in the fun of things. Oh, I
Now,
shouldn't blow up that vase. Oh, well, that was a bad idea.
now,
You
do
know.
you play with a group that understands that failure is just as interesting as success?
I played with a lot of different groups, and I think the group at that time didn't quite see that because they were Ventures League players, and nothing against
Right.
Ventures League, but a lot of folks there are really new to gaming, and they didn't quite see that. So I felt it was my job to show them that failure is okay. And that scene I mentioned just now, where I mentioned that there's a vase in the scene. In one of the scenes, there's a vase that holds the dead soul of this ancient Medusa's lover, and you're not supposed to break it.
Right.
I could have thought it was source of power, so of course I'm seeing invisible and I shatter the vase in the middle of combat, which actually makes things 10 times worse for the group.
Sure.
We get through it, and we all thrashed, and they were all mad at me, but we got an awesome treasure out of it.
Right.
And they didn't. They if you didn't do that, and there was no reason for anyone to do it outside of me thinking it was something else, and I didn't know what it was, but hey, it worked out. And that was when we talked about we can always fail and make bad decisions, and good things can come out of it. No one died. Yeah, it was inconvenient, but you know what? That's gaming. We all make mistakes, and
Now,
I think that's a key thing for me as a player is to get out there and make those mistakes in character and
right.
learn them. Even though I knew better, as a player. Like I shouldn't do this, but Sarban would do this because that's the kind of person he would be, and that's always the hard thing for gamers to get to in gaming is that decision to have a discussion with yourself in and out of character in your own head, and where hey, Mike says, that's a bad idea. Sarban's like, Mike, this could work. All right, man, you're in charge. I'm just here to tell you what's right or wrong. And I let that persona make the decision. And yeah, it worked out in the end, but it was really bad for the group to have to fight a stone giant all of a sudden.
Right.
We're all half our abilities and no spells left, and we survived. But it works. And that particular incident made another player who actually didn't get it quite angry with me.
Right. Right.
And I was quote unquote. I got the you're playing the game wrong speech from a player who's been playing for all of like 6 months.
Right. Right. Uh,
We all
so
love those.
I have a number of questions here
So go
based on
for it.
what you just said because that was a mouthful. One is, do you feel like you're doing the best gaming of your life right now? Do you feel like you're reaching an apex with this kind of character?
Because this particular character gives me a chance to interact with people differently than I normally would in any other scenario. Especially as a GM, they know me as a GM, and time me play this kind of character, it allows me to um, not feel pressured to be the hero, not pressured to be anything important, but to be that fun background character we all love for movies. You know,
Right.
my favorite movie, and the main character is
Right.
actually a secondary character.
Right. Exactly. I had a feeling you were going to bring that up.
I had to because that's who I am. The secondary character usually makes. I'm referencing Big Trouble in Little China for those who don't
Right.
know.
Yes.
And the main character, Kurt Russell's character, is not the main character in the story. He's the sidekick,
Yep.
and the wacky sidekick is always a lot more fun to play when you have the experience of doing that. It's fun to play the hero. Don't get me wrong, but there are times when being that sidekick who is a screw up, who can't get things right, who
Right.
is really comic relief. It's actually great and it's really rewarding, and it takes the pressure off of me as a real person in real life. And so yeah, it's I would say I feel like I'm reaching a better pinnacle of my gaming by relinquishing the roles to people who need those roles
Right.
and choosing something that's outside of my comfort zone. To be an insult comic, and it takes a lot of work. I'm trying to not play. I make notes like, okay, here's an insult I can throw in there, and I had a
Yeah.
list of pages I can go through to find insults to throw at people, just to do that in combat or whatever, because it was fun and for me, and it added to their experience, and that in turn made me feel really good about myself as a gamer.
I talk about this a lot now that I'm older, and I really only play protocol anymore because I'm always playing with new groups.
Right.
And so I'm the one that's sort of teaching the game and running the game at the same time. And without getting to the specifics of the characters that I play, they are generally the villains, or they're generally the
Hmm.
jerk of the story. And I do this for a number of reasons, and hopefully people can learn from this. And it sounds like you're learning from it without actually being there, which is one, you get to put the spotlight on other people, right? You don't need to be the focus of the story because you're sort of taking on the role of the antagonist. So
Hmm.
you're setting the pace. You and I know from watching wrestling that the heel sets the pace of the match,
Exactly.
right? And the same is true in storytelling. The antagonist sets the pace of the story. If the antagonist wanted to meet the protagonist, they would just do that in chapter one. Obviously, the antagonist doesn't want that, so there's all these obstacles that get put in front of them throughout the story until the antagonist is ready to meet them. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm making myself the enemy and allowing the other players to sort of do their scenes. At the same time, I'm making sure that there's a metric and a tone and a pace to the game by taking on that role for myself. And I like the idea of what you're saying here, which is you're allowing them to breathe and you're giving them enough rope to hang themselves proverbially in the
Yeah.
story, right?
Exactly. And it
Um,
comes from running games for a long time too. Is you want to I love playing my own NPC inside of a game I'm running because it allows me to interact with the players better and edge them and push them along. And when I created Sarban, it was that kind of NPC come to life to
right.
allow me to push the group along and as an experienced player. Because I think when we reach the point in our gaming careers where we're really experienced players, we want to bring more people into the hobby. We want to give them the experience that we had,
Right.
and because we've all had that experience where you get to be the hero and you feel really good, like we're going to be successful, we're going to win, and then all that stress, we don't have to feel it anymore. We can actually pick them up and guide them
Right.
along right into the line of fire and watch them enjoy it. It's just as enjoyable.
Yeah. There's something to be said. I don't know if you watch a lot of reaction videos, but there's a certain joy that comes with watching somebody hear something for the first time that you love, right? They're listening to one of
Hmm.
your favorite songs and you see their eyes light up. There's
Exactly.
a certain joy in that. Once they do their reaction show too many times, the shine is off the apple, so to speak, and it's not as fun. But being there when people are having that first, what I call aha and holy shit moments, and I think that they're
Hmm.
two different moments in the career of a gamer, is that watching somebody have that first aha or holy shit moment is so enjoyable for you as a veteran.
Yes.
um, and there's something to be said for the kind of character you're playing to guide people into those moments of, oh, holy crap, I don't have to be winning all the time to enjoy the story.
Because I think some folks don't quite get it yet in their gaming careers that playing a background and playing a side character who's not the main focus of the story is
Right.
so rewarding. It really
Right.
is. You watch actors who play side roles, and I'll reference Babylon 5 because, well, one long running TV show most folks know about. But I was recently watching it with friends who'd not seen it before, and we got to deal with their reactions for four seasons of the show. which is a
Right.
lot of those like, oh my God moments. And it's really enjoyable. But all these really enjoyable moments are not the main character moments. They're side character moments. They're Londo
Right.
and Jakar and their commentary, and watch people like, just I cannot believe how good these characters are. I want to play someone like that in a game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly. Exactly.
You want to hit those moments, and when you watch people hit them, it's like being a teacher and being satisfied in watching your students get the lights on moment, the aha moment, and move forward. And when we as experienced role players feel that, that's how we can be content that, I can feel content that, other gamers and I keep doing this. And when they get to my experience level, they're going to do the same thing, if not sooner.
Right. Right. I think Western media has something to do with that, right? You have a movie. I'll use John Wick as an example,
Good guy.
where he's quiet and he's the protagonist and he's kind of vanilla in a lot of ways. He's a likable character, but he's not somebody I'd want to play in a role playing game session. And you watch that for the first formative years of your life, and you think that's what storytelling is. And then you grow up and you watch something like Big Trouble in Little China, and obviously there's much more depth to the characters in that movie because you and I have watched it collectively 7 million times. We there's a love affair for those characters, and when you sit down you want to play a game, you want to be Kurt Russell, you don't want to be Keanu Reeves. I
Yeah.
and I think that's what you just said. I'm just reiterating it
No,
in
you're
case.
you're dead on with that. That's you want to be someone who brings color. It's
Yeah.
great to be the
Yeah.
hero, and a hero with color is hard to do. Now,
Right.
I play with a lot of really interesting people over the past several years, especially with fifth edition D&D, because there are a lot of new role players, and their ideas are far different than anything I've been used to, and so it
Right.
creates a lot of fun. Playing in a 5-person bard game, all bards at the table, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. But I
Right.
tell you, especially when they're DMs, and we would do it as Adventure League DMs. We get together and play a game together just to test out new stuff. And everyone is a color character. Everyone's a color character,
Right.
and
Right.
there is nothing more rewarding as we're pushing each other to be not necessarily sillier but more interesting, and we in turn around and take that to our tables and encourage
Yeah.
players to do that kind of stuff and experience that kind of stuff with NPCs and whatnot. And I was recently running one of the first module for fifth edition, Lost Mine of Fandelver, and I know it so well. I all the characters, the NPCs in that game live in my head in their own space. I have voices for them. I have all the stuff for them because I've run it so many times.
Right.
But someone said they fell in love with an NPC goblin that I was running because I just keep adding more things to it and having fun with it and
Yeah.
giving them color. And all of a sudden now one's like, we're adopting this character, making part of the team's like, oh, I have to make stats for him. Crap. Um,
Right.
and
Right.
all of a sudden now they have a goblin rogue that, well, okay, sure, why not, we'll work it out. And but because not because that they just need him on the team, but because they want more of the interaction of the
Right.
goblin who speaks in broken common, but when he speaks in goblin sounds like an uh, English surveyor. Why, yes, I clearly think this is a bad course of action for all of us. What was that, Droop? Oh, nothing. Droop say nothing. And people love that kind of stuff. They love those characters in movies. They love them in books. And
Sure.
so we as experienced players should be playing those kinds of characters in games to encourage new players and give them that breath that they need to be a hero and give them the color to play around.
Do you find, I know you're playing with the younger generation now, which is something that I don't necessarily do. Do you find that a lot of these young people are showing up and they don't want to waste their time playing something they can't advance, what's the word, most efficiently?
You mean like as some character advancement or
Yeah, yeah,
story
yeah.
advancement?
So let's say I wanted to sit down and play in your group, and I'm 24, and I've been playing Diablo and World of Warcraft my entire life, and so my idea of gaming is efficient use of my numbers.
Hmm.
Do you find that there's this sort of aversion to playing a character like that that's fun and colorful because they are there to make their stats better?
It's funny. I don't see a lot of people who want to make their stats better. I see people who actually have heard these amazing things about people telling great stories about wacky fun things, and they really don't. They aren't there for the numbers,
Okay.
and that's not everybody, but I see a majority of folks like that, and I'm really glad to see a wide variety of youth get into games who are interested in what it means.
Yeah.
I had an encounter on TikTok with somebody, and they asked about D&D, and I said, oh, well, I'll make a character based on the thing you've talked about. Really? Yeah. You want to play D&D? All of a sudden, I got a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds who want to play D&D. Like, okay, fine, whatever. And they just interested in the idea of a story. They have
Right.
no clue about the math.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong with wanting numbers and progression either. If someone like that came to my table, I would always cater to them because
Right.
everyone at my table gets something that it's going to work for them. If I have a person who loves combat, there'll be combat. If I get someone who loves roleplay, there'll be roleplay. If I
Right.
get someone who likes both, they'll get both. We make it work as a team. And when I get to play, I try and make certain with characters like Sarbin to get back to that point to make certain I'm working with, I'll say, a new player who's really more about the math and not about roleplay. I'm going to make them my project as Sarbin and ping them, harass them, poke them, and make them roleplay with me because as I insult them or tease them or inspire them with foul language, it really does work. And it can pull people out of a shell that they've never been in before. And so I just see it as our duty as longtime role players to really go out and find those people and help them be more, not say better, but more. And better.
Without. Oh, go
Go ahead.
ahead.
No, I would say better. Just not always the best word for that, but I always find
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. I struggle with that too. All right. I'll say better gaming all the time. And I'm not discounting what people are doing. I'm just saying for me, better means that we're all sitting there enjoying and we're not worried. We're not going to argue about movement rates. We're not
Yeah.
going to stop the game to argue about movement. That's what better means to me. But I want to shift gears just a little bit and ask you a question about our past as gamers. How I back in the day, and without talking about specific characters, because we're talking about Serban today. Back in the day, you used to play characters who were always, in my opinion, useless to the solution of the campaign or solution of the adventure, right? And I personally loved it because that's what you and I have always talked about as being great for gaming. But there were some times when you were playing characters that would upset other people at the table.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering at what point in your formative years and I think I already know the answer, but this is for them. At what point in your formative years did you decide I need to stop putting the spotlight on myself when I'm being useless, and I need to just make that part of the story rather than spotlighting it? You understand the difference, the distinction I'm
Yeah, yeah,
making?
it definitely. What I am now is really an outgrowth of that, and I can't really nail down a time when I came to that conclusion. I'd say it was probably in the mid aughts, as well, my time of gaming faltered a bit. I realized that I may have been upsetting people with that kind of thing, but making it about myself,
Right.
and really. When I got back into D&D and with the release of fifth edition, I found my calling with that. But in the meantime, I actually really when I got into LARPing, um, especially with Vampire, and I was doing it with
Yeah.
a large group in here in Los Angeles, I was able to play a character I was playing a character who was actually the head of the vampires, and yet I
Right.
treated myself like a secondary character
Right.
because my job was to pass lore out and was to get people to do missions for me because I'm in charge. I'm not gonna do my own missions. That's stupid. And
Right.
when I realized that, I found the fun in playing that character, and I brought it with me ever since after that to other LARPs I played in or run as well. Being that kind of lore character really is rewarding because you get to help people feel useful. And as a person in real life, I train salespeople. My job is to make people feel useful.
Right. Right.
And so it's really kind of it's actually good for me to be able to come away from what I do for a living and then do it in gaming and actually see a really happy result too. But yeah, that's when I really decided that I had to take the focus off me because I'm going to find enjoyment in this no matter what. I don't need
Right.
everyone staring at me. I want everyone staring at someone else. That the introvert in me is very happy with that. Let's all stare at that person while I make fun of them and
Right.
get them to do stuff. Perfect. Problem solved. They get to be successful. I get to feel successful, and no one's staring at me anymore.
Yeah, and I'll echo what you're saying there because I saw when I started joining you for those LARPs, I saw this huge developmental change in how you were playing um, with that character. And I don't want to talk too long about it because we should have you back on for a second episode talking about that character because I was playing side by side with you, and then we went on to play those mages. And if I had to pick for me a favorite character, it's probably going to be Heimdall. Uh,
Yes.
because I don't get to play that much. I've been GMing for 30, 40 years. So I can't go back and think what's my favorite character because I don't really have that many. But there were moments there where you and I were gaming with all of those younger people, and I remember thinking there, without sounding arrogant, there's a lot that people can learn from us about how to relax and just have fun with this.
Yeah, and when you realize that and you're able to just step in and just help encourage people to play better and play differently and play more,
Right.
it's the greatest feeling. I have a group of friends that I was running Spirit of 77 for. They, mind you, they were born in the 90s. They don't know anything about the 70s. They've learned,
Right.
but they've had so much fun with that because it's just me at that game encouraging them to be more, do more, say more, do more, be crazy,
Right.
be wacky,
Right.
find that part of yourself that you can grow from, and everyone at the table will benefit from it, and it's fun to watch that happen. And running that games like that for people who aren't normally extra and giving them the chance to be extra is really entertaining for me, and it's really rewarding for everybody. So
That's a great way of describing it, being extra. Um, I think a lot of that though comes from trust, right? It's very difficult. I'll tell a short story here. We played Ribbon Drive. I don't know if you've ever played it.
oh yeah, yeah.
I've played it a bunch, and I played once with Jamie and Diane up here, and it was a session. I don't know. We played maybe 3 or 4 times by this point, and we told what I was ready to cry at the end. That's how powerful it was.
Good,
But
that's
we
awesome.
played one of the most emotional, just deep-seated sessions of anything I'd ever played before, and I realized when we're done, I couldn't have done this if there'd been a stranger at the table. I could not have enjoyed this at this depth if I didn't trust these people to tell this kind of story, right? Because
Yes.
there's just certain themes you're afraid to explore in front of other people that you don't know because you don't know what their triggers are. You don't know what their issues are. And there has to be that. The LARP, I think the LARP we're talking about had that potential because we all got along. I mean, obviously there's some outliers of people we didn't like at that LARP, but we mostly got along. And we had the potential to be trusting of each other, and I don't think it happened.
Yeah, and it's finding trust is difficult. You have to find the right people, and you have to then that person has to trust you and to trust them. And developing trust at a game table is difficult. Usually, you're going to a game with people you know, and so it tends to not be so difficult. But some people may not be able to actually reach that level of trust to tell a really deep story. And then you may find somebody who you can tell a deep story with. I mean, I did it at Vampire LARP a couple of years back, and it was one of the best experiences of all. We spent more time writing stuff on the outside about things that we'd be doing than
Right.
inside the game, but that was just us for our entertainment.
Yeah.
But when you find that trust with somebody or some buddies that you can tell anything deep, dark, and awful sometimes, and it's one of the best rewarding things to feel is that you when you have that trust with anybody. And I think society kind of puts trust in a weird basket with relationships that I think people today are coming away from and actually realizing that you don't have to be in a relationship with somebody to trust them. You can be in a
That's a
friendship
really
with
good
somebody.
point. That's really interesting, Mike. I'm gonna
And
have to
so
think about that.
we're seeing deeper games being made today because people have realized that trust is something you can give to others as part of a friendship.
Right.
And trust is one of the many forms of love. And we can talk about all that crazy stuff with the Greeks and how they define love because it's actually correct. When you give that trust to people, you gain a lot. It just takes time to realize where you can give trust, and you can't go to a convention game and have that trust at the table. Now, if friends go to table together, yes, you can. And I always tell folks, if you're going to convention gaming, make sure if you're playing at a convention to play with a friend or two at the same table that you would play the same game together. That way you can do the trustful things and have fun together. It's really important. You can go out and make new friends, but when you play with people you don't know, it's difficult. You have to trust somebody at the table to actually get that far. So it's the GM, it's another player. You really need that when you go and play in new places with new people.
I'm going to pontificate for just a moment, but because I think you've hit on something that I've been saying for a long time, is that in the United States at the very least, I don't know how they're gaming in Europe at the moment. I did play once in Finland, and that was eye opening. But in the United States, I think we look at gaming as freedom and as the freedom to do whatever we want and explore whatever we want and fuck anybody else's fun at the table. There's a number of games that do this, and I don't like them. I've talked about them
Hmm.
before. And we've defined freedom as this severance of relationships because we want to move on to a place where we're sort of quote unquote orphans from responsibility and others. And what ends up happening, especially something like old school D&D, you make up a character, you don't worry about how you're related to anybody, you don't worry about if you like anybody, you meet at a tavern to get a job and you go. Well, imagine you did that in real life. You went into a dungeon with 3 strangers who you don't know. How fast do you think one of those guys is going to stab you while you're while you're
Exactly.
holding the torch at the front of the line? I think defining how you know each other and where your relationship comes, and this is the quintessential ingredient to everything that I design, and everything that I've made in the last 15 years, is you have to establish relationships with one another. And I think you're not only hitting on something outside the game, but also inside the game.
Hmm.
That until we define how our characters relate to one another, we can't understand them at all. And I could go on and on about David Mamet's writing style, by the way, right now, but I don't want to bore anybody. But if you ever get a chance, read what he thinks about talking about other people out of character in stories.
It's an interesting thing, and I'm glad to see more and more game zeros being done when I talk about games online with people. And watching gaming in the past year, and that's a whole other topic for a whole other time. I see a lot of game zero. Recently, I joined an online game. Midway through, they needed to add somebody, and they reached out to me and asked me to join them. So I'm playing on Unknown Armies, which has been fantastic. But my character was not made with the primary group. They don't know
Right.
him and they don't trust him. He was
Right.
foisted on
Exactly.
them by their boss, and
Right.
it's been a long, and mind you, these guys are all fantastic players. We all get along, but it's
Right.
been difficult for my character to actually fit in. And finally, here we are, the last episode before the finale next week, and I finally have feel like I fit in with them after 8 sessions.
Right.
And
Right.
to build trust is difficult. So when you sit and build characters beforehand with that game zero and show how we trust each other, know each other already to start with, you actually will grow faster and better. You don't want that awkwardness, and no one likes awkwardness, but you don't want that awkwardness at the table. Like, yeah, oh yeah, you guys all over here this time for this job. Right? I don't know these guys from the next door neighbor. I don't want to
Right.
talk to them. I don't want to work with them. I don't trust them.
Right.
Because you're right. The minute you get out in the wild, someone's going to stab you in the back, take your coin purse, and they don't need you.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
person playing useless characters, I'm the one who gets stabbed. So, yeah, I don't want that.
I think old school D&D has a lot of old west, wild west charm to it,
Hmm.
which is one of the things that I think is hidden underneath the machinery and it's not really talked about, but it's probably what makes it so attractive, is this idea of, well, I've got a sword and most people don't have a sword, so I'm going to be going out into the wild and hurting things. And they discount what all the other bad things that came with the Wild West, right?
Yep.
Somebody working inside of a mine with a stranger in the dark holding a chisel while somebody's trying to hit it with a hammer,
Yeah.
right? That is a dangerous moment in your life, especially if you don't know the guy you're working next to. And I always think of that kind of situation, not that one all the time specifically, but those kinds of old west situations when I'm thinking of,
Hmm.
I met this guy at a tavern and this wizard gave us a map. Okay, and you've known him how long? And
Yeah.
you're doing what?
Now, you can have great characters and great teams born in fire where you don't know each other and you're forced to actually work together. Yes,
Right.
that does work, but it's still the trust isn't there. I mentioned Lost Mine of Fandelver earlier. I was running that for that group. They are not they we decided that they weren't going to know each other to start with, and
Right.
they weren't they're going to hire by this guy to take this wagon to here, and we're going to pay you guys a lot of money when you show up. Everyone gets their full share of this. If people don't show up, they don't get you don't get their share. So everyone guard this thing, bring it here, and I'll see you in town. And of course they're like, okay, sure. They introduce, they talk a while, and we get them the role play about that. It was actually not too bad, but there was no trust, and so they're still on edge for the entire trip on this wagon, which is really just a small scene. And when they realize that the person that was going to pay them has now been kidnapped and they have to go find them, all of a sudden now it's like we have to trust her to get this person because we all want our money.
Right.
And then they develop the trust over time in the goblin caves. But even so, it makes it difficult. If you start out in advance with people knowing each other and trust the characters trusting each other, all that awkwardness goes away.
Right.
And really, you can tell better stories. If Bob and Alice know each other because Alice's dad was a good friend of Bob's, and Bob just feels protective of her. That's a small enough thing. You have to know each other in depth, but that kind of little piece makes a difference. and just the little touch of knowledge and backstory
Right.
gives you the
Right.
connection that you want and that we all crave. We all crave that connection with the story.
Right.
In playing Sarbin, when we were playing Tomb of Annihilation, uh, we want you to go out in the jungle with us. Hell no, guys! I make a living here. I'm not going out in the jungle with you. No,
Yeah.
really, there's treasure. Have you seen the money I'm making here selling colored water?
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
These rubes, and no offense, guys, you're rubes. Gave me money for nothing. So why would I go out with you? And of course, that was my argument. I talked to the GM in advance. I'm going to argue that point. Just make sure I have to go with them. And so of course the law's after me, so I have to go with them. And
Right.
but they thought it was hilarious that I was telling them not to go. I'm not going. Why would I go with you guys? It's silly. You guys are crazy. That's how you die. Let's just raise enough money, get on the ship, and go back to the main continent. This Chult sucks.
And
I
then
want
of
to go
course
home.
that's the moment you need the scene cut and you're on the wagon with them the next day. And
Which is exactly what happened.
right. Right. And so you talked earlier about arguing to agreement, and you and I have talked about this for decades. What arguing to agreement? But give everybody your impression of what that means.
To me, it means one of the biggest problems in D&D is that people will not get along. And really, in any good story, in any good script for a movie, characters do not get along because people not getting along is an important part of growth. But I don't want to go on this trip. I don't want to go on this trip. I'm needed for this trip because I'm a powerful wizard or whatever.
Right.
I will argue to agree to go, even if it's not beneficial to my character because it's beneficial to the group. And so
Right.
if I'm chaotic neutral and you're lawful good, we have to find a way to work together. That's arguing to agreement, really. And
Right.
so, despite the fact that being chaotic neutral is all about me and doing
Right.
off kilter things,
Right.
I'm going to work with this guy who he's great cover for everything I'm doing. So if I'm doing nasty shit, if I hide in his shadow, no one's going to question me. And that's arguing to agreement. I'm going to go with this paladin because it benefits me if I think about it. You have to find ways as a player and players, not single player, every player goes to find a way to work together because this is what gaming really is about togetherness. It's about working together as a team, even though you may not like each other, even though you may be at odds. Think of I lost of the name. I think it's Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. All the primary characters in that do not get along, are not helpful to each other, and it actually hurts the story in that movie. If
Right.
they knew each other, if they had a reason to get along, they could have worked together and they wouldn't all be dead. So that's arguing agreement is for me is finding ways to make the team work together and understand that sometimes you have to make compromises like anything else. Compromise when you can. If you can't, then don't. But really compromise when you can to make the story work for everybody. Because it's all of our job at the table. Despite what you're playing and who you are. If you're playing in a role-playing game at a tabletop or in a LARP, your job is to work with everybody else there, whether it is as an antagonist or a protagonist.
Right.
Still designed to work together with them. If I don't like Johnny's character across the room in this LARP because his character stabbed my character in the back 10 years ago, I'm still going to advance story by mucking with this character.
Right. Right.
And that is more fun than people think it is.
I think I like to use League of Extraordinary Gentlemen as an
Oh,
example
good call.
sometimes when talking about this kind of story. It falls apart in the third act, and it's one of the reasons everybody hates it.
Yeah.
But it is so good for 2/3 of the movie. And you have that. You have these characters being brought together from disparate backgrounds, and they have an objective, and they don't like it. They don't have to like it. And I think that we get caught up in this the misuse of the word agency. I'm going to pontificate some more now. Everybody believes that agency is the ability to do whatever you want. And that's not what agency means. Agency means you have the power to affect your decisions. And the decisions you make have impact on the story. That's what agency actually means. And you have a lot of people who don't want to even start an adventure with, okay, you guys start at the tavern because now they think you've stripped their agency away. No, the story has to start somewhere. I'm not going to start at your birth and role play through 25 years of your life before you decided to become an adventurer.
Right.
When we played Vecna, my Vecna story at the con, I handed you guys characters who all had the basic information you needed to know, plus here's your relationship with all of these other people at the table. Here's what's been going on. And I believe, without, again, sounding arrogant, I think I gave you one of the best starting points that a D&D game could have, because we were telling a lot of it in flashback. You were standing in front of this gate trying to figure out how to open it. You all knew each other, but without knowing each other because you'd never played together before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was everything you needed to know for the context. That's an important word when we talk about some of this stuff. The context of what it is that you're doing. And your character has to fit the context. It's one of the reasons why I talked earlier about you playing characters that were ineffectual, because I know why you were doing it and it was fun, but your characters didn't fit the context of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Your bard fits the context of this game, right? And so you're finally playing a character, while not exactly useful, he belongs here. He has a purpose being here, as opposed to, well, we're all playing SEAL Team 6, except Mike, who's playing a little old lady who sells fruit down on B Avenue, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. That character, when Starvin started out, he was pretty useless. But as any D&D character grows and you find different things you can do in scope, at 6th level, the Bardic Lore College, they get a spell outside of the Bard lists, and a lot of people, I almost said idiots. Okay, maybe they are. Will take Fireball because they want to blow things up.
Of course.
You want to guess what spell I took?
Hold on. Is it 3rd level?
It's 3rd level.
3rd level. I don't really know the spell list in 5th edition. Off the top of my head, I would guess some sort of illusion.
I took Animate Dead.
Oh, fantastic.
Why? So I could have a band of skeletons to play backup music. I bought instruments for them.
Oh my god.
And swords and longbows. And as time went by, because you could just keep that spell going for forever.
Yeah.
I have a troop of 4 following me around.
Right.
And there was a player who was rather nasty who died in the game, got mad and walked away. And so of course I raised his character with Animate Dead, destroying it permanently. Don't do that. Don't be mean to other players in games. You mean things back.
I love that story. I absolutely love it. I love the story of that guy, that GM that cast Counterspell on the wizard casting Resurrect.
Oh God.
Or whatever it was. I love that story so much.
That's awful and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You finding a way to be useful at a higher level was great. And so he's still useful, but man, I just find ways to color the game along as I go.
Yeah.
Like, who's the bard? Who's the guy with all the skeletons? Is he a necromancer? Nah, he's a bard. He's a bard, I think, but he just insults people. So he's a necromancer who insults people? I don't know what he is, but necromancers don't dress like that.
Yeah.
Best conversation with a GM had in front of me with himself ever. That character. Who's the necromancer? He's not a necromancer, he's a bard. He's a what? If we let him into the town, you can't bring those skeletons in here. They're my band. What? And so that kind of stuff to me is where gaming is successful, because you get them to be funny. Everyone has a good laugh. We go on and tell more of the story, and that's providing color. If you're not providing color in the game, even as a hero, are you really adding to it?
Yeah.
And I think teaching players to add to the game, to add to the story, to keep giving more is rewarding. I get to do a lot more in LARP as of late. The past couple of years, a lot of LARP, working with people who are new to LARP is really entertaining, because it's not just sitting at a table telling a story. They have to physically get out there and actually do the work.
Right.
And that is rewarding in a whole other context. But
yeah,
LARPing
adds a visceral component that's missing from the tabletop, certainly. And we've discovered that over the years running LARPs together. The prisoner LARP comes to mind. Where is that thing? I handed it to one of you. Where is that thing now? And so these live props really, they change how you approach a game. I know you and I could talk for 7 days about this.
Definitely.
But I don't want these episodes to go too long. So what is the lasting impression you want everybody to have of your character?
The last impression I can give you of Sarban really is that, remember that the fool is the most dangerous person in the group. Whether you think so or not, they don't have to have a sword. The person who can use their words outside of stats and dice is the most dangerous person at that table. And you need to pay attention to them and learn from them, because they can do things that you might be able to do if you're new to role playing. And if you're not new to role playing, pay attention to them, because they can probably kill you. Almost always.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for making time. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, and we struggled to find time to do this, but thanks for coming on.
Oh no, no, thank you for inviting me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I hope that it was fun. It's going to be fun for people to listen to too. This is the first one of these. If you're still listening, this is the first one of these. I'm hoping to talk to people in the industry, do one of these once a week, maybe not so frequent if people don't have time, but I really want to hit on something here with this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again. Thanks for coming out, Mike.
Thank you.